Introduction. You stood in that showroom, didn't you? Autumn of 1964. The brochures promised revolution, European Car of the Year, they said. Space for 6 adults in a car shorter than your neighbor's Cortina. Front-wheel drive like the Mini that changed everything. Your wife could park it easily, they assured you. The salesman was so confident. BMC was Britain's pride, 5th largest car maker in the world. Issigonis was a genius, everyone said so. Maybe you bought one, maybe your father did. Maybe you just remember seeing them everywhere for a few years, then nowhere at all. That wide, ungainly shape. The steering wheel that fought you in every car park. The water pooling in the door pockets after rain. The smell of burning oil on early cars. The jokes down at the pub. Why is it called a Landcrab? Because it moves sideways and nobody wants to be seen in one. But here's what nobody told you at the time. That car, that awkward, troublesome, brilliant, doomed Austin, 1800, wasn't just another failed model. It was a warning sign written in 6-foot letters that nobody in Longbridge wanted to read. While you were struggling with that heavy steering, BMC was dying. While dealers were making excuses for oil consumption and water leaks, the foundations of British motor manufacturing were crumbling, and within 11 years of that showroom visit, British Leyland would collapse into nationalisation, dragging 200,000 jobs and Britain's reputation as an automotive power down with it. The 1800 won European Car of the Year. Motor magazine called it potentially one of Britain's great family cars. The engineering was genuinely revolutionary. Transverse engine, hydroelastic suspension, packaging that embarrassed cars costing twice as much. Issigonis had created the Mini, the 1100, 2 of the most important cars Britain ever built. He couldn't fail again, could he? He did. And the failure wasn't just his, it was systemic, catastrophic, a perfect storm of management incompetence, engineering arrogance, and commercial delusion. This isn't another misty-eyed look back at quirky British cars. You lived through it. You watched British manufacturing dominance slip away year by year, factory closure by factory closure. The Landcrab was there at the beginning of the end. Not the only cause. Union militancy, government meddling, underfunding, all played their parts. But the Landcrab symbolized everything that went wrong. Brilliant ideas executed badly, launched prematurely, positioned stupidly, defended stubbornly despite mounting evidence that nobody wanted to buy the damn thing. And the worst part? It didn't have to be this way. Problem 1. A brief that changed everything. The ADO 17 project started sensibly enough in 1956. BMC needed a replacement for the aging Farina saloons, the Austin Cambridge and Morris Oxford. Simple brief, a 1.6-litre family car using conventional engineering to compete with Ford. That's what dealers expected, that's not what they got. Alec Issigonis had returned to BMC in 1955, invited by Leonard Lord to design a new family of cars. Then the Suez Crisis hit, fuel was rationed, and the small car project became urgent. That became the Mini. Brilliant decision. But while the Mini rushed to production, the larger car project began mutating. Front-wheel drive replaced rear-wheel drive. The wheelbase grew from 93 inches to 106 inches. Most critically, Issigonis decided to use the new 1.8-litre B-series engine instead of the planned 1.5 or 1.6-litre unit. Each decision made engineering sense alone. Together they transformed a Farina replacement into something else entirely, bigger, heavier, more complex, more expensive. By production in 1964, it cost £808, 14 shillings and 7 pence. 15% more than the Farina it supposedly replaced. £150 more than the Ford Cortina. Management set production targets of 4,000 units weekly, over 200,000 annually. Based on what market research? None. George Harriman simply decided it would sell. The elderly Farina range stayed in production until 1971, because the 1800 had strayed so far from its purpose. BMC now had two mid-sized saloons competing with each other, neither properly positioned, both losing money. Ford must have been delighted. Problem 2. Engineering genius meets marketing reality. Alec Isigonis was brilliant, perhaps too brilliant. He despised what customers wanted: radios, power steering, conventional dashboards. He famously said people should sit on nails. His philosophy: you must not mix function with fashion. A car should take its shape entirely from engineering. This wasn't eccentricity, it was arrogance, and George Harriman was too deferential to challenge him. The engineering was genuinely revolutionary. Transverse 1,798 cubic centimeter B-series engine producing 84 brake horsepower. Front-wheel drive with the gearbox underneath. Hydrolastic interconnected suspension providing exceptional ride quality. A 106-inch wheelbase delivering limousine-like rear legroom. The body shell was extraordinarily strong. Landcrabs became demolition derby favorites because they simply wouldn't break. The packaging was extraordinary. 6 adults fit comfortably in a car shorter than most competitors. Motor Magazine accurately described it as having the space of a 3-litre car, performance of a 2-litre, and running costs of a 1.5-litre car. But Isigonis made compromises that alienated buyers. To maximize space, he pushed wheels to the corners and widened the body dramatically, hence Landcrab. Pininfarina produced elegant styling. Isigonis widened it and ruined proportions. Inside was worse, a minimalist dashboard with instruments scattered randomly. If you wore a seatbelt, you operated heater controls with your foot. The steering wheel was enormous, mounted oddly, bus driver steering. And the steering itself required genuine physical effort to park. Women hated it. When drivers complained, Isigonis shrugged. He'd designed it deliberately that way, believing it gave better road feel. These weren't oversights, they were choices by a man who believed he knew better than the market. Performance was adequate. 90 miles per hour top speed, 0 to 60 in 16 seconds. The ride quality was excellent. On motorways, it was refined and comfortable. BMC's rally crews finished second in the 1968 London to Sydney Marathon, proving its strength, but rallying success didn't translate to showroom appeal. Heavy steering, awkward driving position, minimalist interior, controversial styling, none of this appealed to fleet managers and middle managers BMC needed. These people could buy a conventional, good-looking Cortina with light steering, or a weird-looking Landcrab with heavy steering and a dashboard designed by an engineer who despised dashboards. Most chose the Cortina. Problem 3. Launch disaster and quality collapse. October the 13th, 1964. Launch day. The first 70,000 1800s off the line became a quality nightmare. Oil consumption problems plagued early cars. Isigonis had argued with his engineers about floor panel overlaps, overruled them, and got it wrong. Early Minis and 1800s leaked like sieves. One journalist allegedly returned a test car with a goldfish in the door pocket. The Times later reported that these first 70,000 cars sent BMC dealers frantic with customer complaints. Here's the crushing statistic. Demand was so low that it took until 1966 to build those first 70,000 cars. BMC had planned for 4,000 weekly. They were building barely 1,000. Peak annual production hit 57,000 units in 1965 to 66. Then it declined. The Ford Cortina was selling 250,000 annually worldwide. The Landcrab never came close. The damage to BMC's reputation was catastrophic. Stories of leaking cars and oil-burning engines spread through the motoring community faster than BMC could fix the problems. Even after the issues were resolved, the reputation stuck. customer confidence evaporated, the 1800 became something to avoid, not aspire to. Problem 4, badge engineering. Madness, BMC's response to poor sales, more badge engineering. The Morris version finally appeared in 1966, 2 years after launch. The well-trimmed Wolseley 18/85 followed in 1967, 3 separate dealer networks selling essentially identical cars, competing with each other instead of the opposition. Ford dealers could offer customers the entire Ford range. BMC dealers couldn't even offer customers the complete BMC range. This wasn't just inefficient, it was insane. Austin dealers got first crack at the 1800, while Morris dealers sold the aging Farina. Then Morris got the 1800, while Austin dealers had already exhausted their market. Meanwhile, the 1100 and 1300 continued, outselling everything, badge engineered across 5 different marquees, cannibalizing sales from each other and from the 1800. The 6-cylinder versions arrived in 1972, the Austin 2200, Morris 2200, and Wolseley 6. These used the 2,200 cubic centimetre E-Series engine that had already proven itself in Australian-built models. The Wolseley 6, with its timber yard interior and smooth engine, was actually rather good. It outsold the Austin and Morris 6-cylinder variants by 25%. Too little, too late. By 1972, British Leyland was already in crisis. Problem 5. The merger that doomed them all. January 17, 1968. The Savoy Hotel in London. Sir George Harriman of British Motor Holdings and Sir Donald Stokes of Leyland Motors announced their merger with forced smiles for the cameras and carefully rehearsed platitudes about creating an industrial powerhouse. Behind the scenes, there was acrimony, resentment, suspicion, and the certain knowledge among those who understood corporate dynamics that this marriage was doomed from the start. Prime Minister Harold Wilson and Technology Minister Tony Benn had pushed relentlessly for this merger. They believed Britain needed a giant automotive conglomerate to compete with General Motors, Ford, Volkswagen, and the rising Japanese manufacturers. They looked at the success of large corporations in other countries and assumed size alone would bring success. They were spectacularly wrong, but they had government power and they weren't afraid to use it. When BMH and Leyland initially resisted, Ben made it clear that the alternative was a hostile takeover. Harriman and his executives agreed reluctantly, knowing they had no choice. British Leyland Motor Corporation emerged from this forced marriage with 40% of the UK car market, 40 factories spread across Britain, and approximately 200,000 employees. It manufactured everything from the Mini to Jaguar saloons, from the Austin Maxi to Leyland trucks and buses. On paper, it looked formidable. In reality, it was a chaotic mess from day one. The cultures were completely incompatible. Leyland was lean, efficient, focused on trucks and buses with a successful sideline in upmarket cars like Triumph and Rover. The company made money, understood its markets, and ran its operations competently. Sir Donald Stokes, though perhaps not a visionary, was a capable manager who knew how to run a profitable business. BMC, now British Motor Holdings after absorbing Jaguar, was the opposite. Bloated, inefficient, riddled with internal competition between its various marquees. The Mini was selling in huge volumes but losing money on every unit because Leonard Lord had never bothered to cost it properly before setting the price. The 1100 made decent profits but faced increasing competition. The 1800 was a commercial disappointment that had cost a fortune to develop and was generating nothing but losses and damaged reputation. BMC's contribution to this merger, a product range where the flagship model lost money, the mid-size car failed commercially, and only the small family car made profits. Engineering that was innovative but expensive to manufacture and troublesome to maintain. Quality control that was poor at best and catastrophic at worst. Those 70,000 problematic 1800s that took until 1966 to build and sell had permanently damaged customer confidence. industrial relations that were poisonous, with constant disputes between management and unions and between different factories that competed with each other instead of the competition. And leading the technical side, Alec Isigonis, whose brilliant but uncommercial designs had helped bring BMC to its knees. Isigonis had no concept of costs, no interest in what customers wanted, no understanding of product planning, and no ability to work within a corporate structure. He was a design genius who believed the market should adapt to his engineering rather than the other way around. Stokes quickly recognized the problem. Within months of the merger, he sidelined Isigonis, creating a special developments director position that sounded important but wielded no real power. Harry Webster replaced Isigonis as technical director for small and medium cars. The message was clear. The Isigonis era was over. His approach, engineering purity without commercial reality, had failed. But the damage was done. BMC had brought nothing but problems to the merger. Overlapping model ranges, badge engineering gone mad. Why did British Leyland need Austin, Morris, MG, Wolseley, Riley and Vanden Plas all selling essentially the same cars through different dealers? Outdated factories that needed massive investment to modernize. A reputation for unreliability that was spreading through the market faster than any advertising campaign could counter it. The Landcrab's doors appeared everywhere in a desperate attempt to amortize tooling costs. The Austin Maxi used them, the Austin 3-litre used them, prototypes for Bentley and Rolls-Royce used them, even the Panther DeVille would eventually use them. Those doors were everywhere because British Leyland was desperate, not because they were good doors or because they suited those applications, but because the tooling existed and spreading the cost across multiple models was the only way to make the numbers work. This wasn't product planning, this was panic, and it created new problems while solving none of the old ones. The Austin 3-litre shared those doors with the 1800, despite being marketed as an upmarket luxury car, costing £1,500, twice the price of an 1800. It offered a 6-cylinder engine and self-leveling suspension, but no more interior space than the cheaper car. Customers could see they were getting 1800 doors on an expensive car and wondered what else was being shared. The 3-litre became another commercial failure. The Marina, launched in 1971 as British Leyland's answer to the Cortina, used the floor pan and rear axle from the Morris Minor, a car designed in the 1940s. The Marina was conventional, cheap to build, and deliberately old-fashioned because Stokes believed that's what the market wanted after BMC's front-wheel drive experiments. He was partly right. The Marina sold reasonably well, but it was also a cynical admission that British Leyland couldn't compete on engineering or quality, so they'd compete on price using 40-year-old technology. Problem 6. Decline and collapse. The 1800 limped through 3 Mark revisions. Mark II in 1968 featured a cheaper interior, cost-cutting disguised as improvement. Mark III in 1972 added tacky Formica effect walnut trim and finally moved the handbrake between front seats. These weren't improvements, they were rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. British Leyland faced intensifying competition from Japanese imports and European manufacturers building better cars more efficiently. Market share, which hit 40% in 1971, began its decline. The Marina was conventional but half-baked. The Allegro looked like a mistake from every angle. The Maxi should have been brilliant, but launched with a dreadful gearbox and no hatchback, despite being designed as one. Every failure traced back to the same problems that created the Landcrab. No market research, engineers designing for themselves, not customers. Weak leadership, unable to say no to prima donna designers. Badge engineering, creating internal competition instead of market strength. Throughout it all, the conviction that British engineering genius would triumph over foreign efficiency and customer preferences, April 1975. 7 years after the merger, British Leyland collapsed under debts of £200 million. Wilson and Benn, who encouraged the merger, now nationalised the company to prevent 1 million workers becoming unemployed. Stokes departed, humiliated. In 1977, Britain became a net importer of cars for the first time, a position from which it never recovered. Landcrab production ended in early 1975 after 387,283 units over 11 years. The ADO 71 Princess replaced it, the car that got it all together. It didn't. Nothing British Leyland touched seemed to work properly. Ironically, Australian-built 18s, hundreds were rather good. Built at Zetland, New South Wales, they received over 40 modifications for local conditions, stronger suspension, better sealing, proper engineering for rough roads. Australian owners swore by them. The difference, local management understood you couldn't just ship British-designed products overseas and expect success. The Landcrab's commercial failure weakened BMC precisely when strength was needed. Had the 1800s succeeded, BMC might have avoided the disastrous Leyland merger. With strong finances, the company could have invested in better products, resisted cost-cutting, perhaps acquired Leyland on its own terms. Instead, BMC came weak, desperate, carrying reputational damage from the Landcrab disaster. The human cost was staggering. Longbridge alone employed 25,000 workers in the 70s. Multiply that across 40 factories. Every failed product meant job losses, closed factories, communities devastated. The Landcrab didn't just kill BMC, it helped kill British mass-market car manufacturing. The BMC Landcrab died because it was born wrong. Wrong positioning, wrong price, wrong market, wrong execution. But the real killer wasn't the car itself, it was the management failure that created it. George Harriman, too weak to control Alec Issigonis, too arrogant to listen to market research or customer complaints, a board that set production targets based on hope rather than analysis. A corporate culture that valued engineering cleverness over commercial viability. You lived through this era. You watched British car manufacturing decline from world leadership to national joke. The Landcrab wasn't the only cause. Union militancy, government interference, undercapitalization, and foreign competition all played their parts. But the Landcrab symbolized everything wrong with British Leyland. Brilliant ideas executed badly, launched prematurely, positioned incorrectly, and defended stubbornly despite mounting evidence of failure. Today, a good Landcrab can be bought for under £2,000. The engineering that made it revolutionary is finally appreciated. The space efficiency that seemed weird in 1964 looks prescient now. The strong body shell that earned ridicule ensures survivors remain. Perhaps 50 years later we can finally see what Issigonis intended. A car ahead of its time, held back by management behind the times. If you owned a Landcrab, or worked on them, or remember when they were new, share your stories in the comments. Did you love them or hate them? Did you understand why they failed, or were you surprised? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive history, subscribe for more. Hit that like button. Because these stories, the failures as well as the successes, teach us more about the British motor industry than any official history ever could. Thank you for watching. And remember, the Landcrab didn't kill British Leyland. British Leyland killed the Landcrab and then killed itself.